So at the time of writing, it's still unclear whether Benjamin Sesko will join Manchester United or Newcastle. However, what is clear is that Sesko isn't just another Rasmus Hojlund, and that the comparisons between the two are vague at best, lazy at worst, and that's because Sesko at RB Leipzig and Hojlund at Atalanta are two completely different types of strikers, with Hojlund's performance level being far more dependent on him actually scoring in the game in comparison to Sesko, which becomes fairly obvious when we actually compare Sesko at RB Leipzig with Hojlund at Atalanta, with the main focus being on their efficiency when linking play. And so in this particular video, I'm going to be analysing Hojlund's link play against Inter Milan during the 22-23 season whilst playing for Atalanta, and various clips of Sesko linking play over the past 2 seasons for RB Leipzig. So what is the main difference between Sesko and Hojlund's skill sets? Well, there are quite a few, with Sesko's ball striking technique, offensive aerial ability, as well as his movement and overall football IQ, all being key differences in their skill set, but the most significant that I think affects their game the most is their baseline technical ability, which we're able to see clearly by using video footage to analyse both players. But before we get into the analysis of the match footage, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. They've got a variety of different current season and retro jerseys, including the new Manchester United releases for the upcoming season. They sent me over this Bruno Fernandes home shirt for the upcoming season, as well as the white away shirt from the 06-07 season with Ronaldo 7 on the back, alongside this Zidane Juventus shirt from the 90s as well. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount, so I'll leave a link in the description and in the comments section below. So in this first clip, we see Hojlund receiving the ball, isolated in the Inter Milan half, with space over to his left side. Now in this position, whilst he could look to hold up the ball, waiting for the midfield line to get higher up the pitch to support him in the attack, as we see frequently in Hojlund's game even until today, he's going to look to utilise his pace and power by carrying the ball into that space on the left side. However, as you're going to see is a common theme in Hojlund's performance in this particular game, and really throughout his whole career so far, his first touch is far from optimal, which leads to an overall inefficiency in his game. This touch should take the ball across his body, enabling him to then race forward into the space, with him also now having a few yards advantage on the slower Inter Milan players starting behind him. However, his first touch is not optimal, not heavy enough and directed too wide, which enables the Inter Milan player to Hojlund's left to eat up the ground and eventually dispossess him. In this next clip just a few minutes later, the ball goes into Hojlund's feet with his back to goal and the centre back behind him in close proximity on the left hand side of the pitch, and in this situation Hojlund should really be focused on the space that his wider movement has created on his inside, where Atalanta have 2 players breaking from deep, potentially setting up the chance for Hojlund's first or second touch to take him inside, wherefrom he can then find a pass in field or play a reverse pass with his right foot to release a runner from deep through the centre of the Inter Milan back line. However, because Hojlund doesn't have full confidence in his technical ability, he seems to not feel comfortable coming inside onto his right foot, and so he takes the ball over to his left side, which only works to box himself in, now being surrounded by Inter Milan players under pressure from behind, being forced towards the touchline. And whilst he does retain possession, you can clearly see how his technical inefficiency has led to a regression in the Atalanta attack, now having possession in front of the Inter Milan midfield line, after initially having progressed it in behind them with the pass into Hojlund's feet. In comparison, you can see the vast difference in technical quality between the two strikers, as in this particular clip after a clearance upfield, despite being under pressure from a Wolfsburg centre-back, Sesko's first touch to bring the ball out of the sky is immaculate, and even though he is forced wide, just as Hojlund was, it wasn't because of a suboptimal first touch. However, in this situation, back to goal under pressure, being forced towards the touchline, look at how Sesko is still able to progress the ball forward. If this is Hojlund in this situation, he most likely ends up going backwards to the midfield behind, which isn't exactly a poor choice, if it is done quickly and efficiently. But not only is Sesko more efficient at releasing possession than Hojlund, but he's also able to progress the ball forward in situations that Hojlund would be forced backwards. And we can see this here as Sesko uses a scooped pass on the turn to not make the centre-back, progressing the ball into the feet of Yusuf Poulsen, And now you're able to see the benefit that Sesko's technical efficiency has on the entire attack, in comparison to Hojlund, with Leipzig now in a promising position where Sesko's pass has taken 2 Wolfsburg players out of the game, including one of the centre-backs who's followed him wide, setting up the opportunity for a 2v1 on the far side if Poulsen is now able to lay the ball back first time, with the Leipzig midfielder behind using another first-time pass to progress the ball into the centre, creating a 2v1 against a Wolfsburg right-back, potentially allowing Leipzig to release a runner in behind into a 1v1, creating a high-value opportunity, stemming from Sesko's technical proficiency when bringing the ball down first time under control, and then being able to progress the ball forward from the sort of situation where Hojlund would be forced backwards. Now here against Borussia Dortmund we see Sesko receiving the ball to feet in a similar situation to the previous Hojlund clip against Inter Milan, where he's over to the left side, his teammates are in field, with 2 Dortmund players in close proximity, ready to apply pressure on his first touch. Whilst in this position, Hojlund would likely opt to take the ball onto his left side, boxing himself in on a channel and leaving him with the only option of trying to use his pace to drive the ball forward down the flank, and that's if his first touch doesn't lead to him being dispossessed. Sesko's far higher technical quality allows him to turn away from both Borussia Dortmund players, taking the ball on his right foot using a disguised turning technique that allows him to get the ball under control, while simultaneously turning in field away from the pressure, taking 2 Dortmund players out of the game, with the centre-back left on the floor, now opening up a far more promising opportunity for Leipzig than if Sesko had taken the ball on his left side and tried to drive the ball down the line, as we probably would have seen from Hojlund. But from this clip we're also able to see where Sesko needs to improve, as whilst his technical ability has set him up to link the attack efficiently, he doesn't quite have the decisiveness to pick the right pass. I do think that Openda lets him down a bit by not anticipating Sesko's turn in field and spinning on the outside of the remaining centre-back, providing movement in behind the back line for Sesko to find with a through ball. But even without this run, Sesko should be feeding the ball back in field, where from if Simakan can run off the Dortmund left-sided midfielder, now Leipzig are in a 2v1 situation, with the prospect of Simakan being released in behind into a 1v1 goal-scoring position. But Sesko seems to get caught in 2 minds, as I think he's trying to work the angle to release Simakan down the right himself, instead of playing the simple pass in field. And even here I think he could look to beat the Dortmund central midfielder with his close ball control and quick footwork by feinting to go right before dropping a shoulder and going back across the central midfielder, thereby progressing the ball in behind the Dortmund midfield line himself and setting up a 3v2 in the centre, with Simakan racing forward down the outside. However, his lack of decisiveness allows the Dortmund midfield line to get back goal side, and Sesko is ultimately forced backwards just like Hojlund was. But even though the result was the same, you can clearly see that Sesko's technical ability is going to lead to him being far more efficient at linking play, whilst Hojlund's looser first touch and overall ball control often leads to him not taking the most efficient route to progressing the ball, or just linking play, which has a negative impact on the attack as a whole, in comparison to Sesko, whose efficient link play and ball progression instead provides a positive impact on the attack as a whole. I also think Hojlund's imbalance between his left and right side often leads to him avoiding simple passes over to the right side and instead unnecessarily going back into congested zones where he's more likely to lose possession. And this next clip is a perfect example of this. So the pass goes into Hojlund's feet with his back to goal under immediate pressure from the centre-back behind, and he should be using a first-time pass with his right foot, or at least one touch and then a right-footed pass to move the ball out towards the Atalanta right side. However, once again he ignores the opportunity on his right, seemingly also losing concentration as he gets sucked into a physical duel with the defender behind, subsequently not getting a optimal first touch, whilst also looking to go down the left side, which ultimately just leads to him taking the ball into the most congested zone on the pitch and losing possession. This time when the pass goes into his feet with a defender on his back, Hojlund's decision to turn to his left side is the right decision, and he sets himself up in a position to find the overlapping run down the left, but once again his technical ability leads to him taking more touches than necessary, inviting pressure, and even though he does eventually get the ball out wide, it's always very chaotic even if it does come off, and nowhere near as efficient as Sesko's link play. This time he beats Brozovic to the ball and is able to turn with it and drive forward, and now he has a simple pass on to his right side, But he isn't efficient with his touches, taking more than necessary, allowing Brozovic to get back and make a sliding tackle to dispossess him. Sesko, on the other hand, is far more efficient in multiple different types of situations. See, in this example against Wolfsburg, we see Sesko in a deeper and wider area, with Openda being the player to hold an advanced position alongside the two centre-backs, which is ideally where you'd want Sesko to be in order to optimise his own ability to generate high-value chances consistently. However, you can definitely see why Leipzig would often use Sesko as a centre-forward who drops deep and pulls wide to link the attack. First of all, he wins a physical duel, showing his upper body strength, but as he turns with the ball to drive forward, once again in this example I also think Openda hasn't made the optimal forward run, which should be back across Sesko into the right-sided channel in order to provide a passing option down the line, but also to drag the centre-back over and open up the space for Xavi Simons to make a run into from deep. However, without this run from Openda, Sesko is forced to go alone, showing the sort of close ball control and quick footwork that Hojlund simply hasn't possessed, even going back to his time at Atalanta, showing that it's not just confidence, it's outright technical ability, with Sesko efficiently then able to drive past the first defender, before then using his close ball control and quick footwork to evade the second challenge, and then with his weaker left foot switches play out to Leipzig's left-hand side, moving the attack to where the space is. But it's this particular piece of link play in a more congested area higher up the pitch between the lines against Union Berlin, which shows exactly the upgrade that Sesko would bring to Amorim's system. See, just like Ruben Amorim's ball progression strategy in the middle third, Leipzig look to work the ball through the centre of the pitch, first with a midfield splitting pass into Olmo, who with one touch is able to knock the ball forward into Sesko, who's taking up an advanced central position as he would in United's narrow front three. And as Sesko receives possession, you can see that he's already pulled off the centre-back, not even in contact, as Hojlund almost initiates as default, with Sesko being far more efficient in these types of situations, recognising where the space is already, and taking the opportunity to lay the ball off first time to Dani Olmo on his right, before then using a facilitating run spinning to his right to set up the opportunity to now make a run in behind the back line, wherefrom he's found with Dani Olmo's first time dink over the centre-back, and this is a type of finish that most strikers wouldn't even have the confidence to take with their head first time, let alone finishing it as clinically as Sesko does. And so the main difference that I see with Sesko and Hojlund, even prior to Hojlund's move to Manchester United, is their baseline technical ability, with Sesko not just being a few levels above Hojlund in terms of quality, but I would argue he's up there with the best strikers in the world when it comes to his overall technical proficiency, which I think is the primary reason for why Sesko's link play is so much more effective and efficient than Hojlund's, meaning that if Sesko doesn't score, the value he brings to the side when it comes to knitting the attack together allows him to have a significantly better performance in comparison to when Hojlund doesn't score. And it's this lesser dependence on goal scoring that makes Sesko around £65 million a far lower risk in comparison to Hojlund at £65 million. So let me know what you think of my analysis comparing Sesko and Hojlund in the comment section below, and if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. You can use code ATLANTIS at checkout for a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below. And if you want to check out any plot graphs or articles or sign up to my Instagram group chat, I'll leave my Patreon linked on the end screen now as well.